Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you know that GYET is now on Patreon. So at GYET, if you join us on Patreon, you get access to features, benefits that no one else can get. You won't see this on YouTube. You won't hear this on Spotify. If you sign up at the startup level, because this is all about entrepreneurship, the startup level, you'll get ad-free episodes, except for my ad reads, with outtakes included. So you'll get to see when we stumble, we make funny comments, we make mistakes. You'll be able to see all of that and laugh along with us. You will access the Patreon founder level members' questions to the experts. So I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but you will have more inside access to these entrepreneurs that I'm interviewing. You'll also get a PDF of my handwritten episode notes with questions that I have planned to ask and maybe some that I didn't get to during the episode. Now, if you want to join and support at the founder level, this is where you'll get everything at the startup level, but you'll also get access to a live updating Google Sheet with show information and filming dates. Why that is important is because you will have the opportunity at this level to be backstage while the episode is filming. So you won't have to wait until the episode comes out to watch. You can watch from backstage and just be right there right now. Also, you'll have 5 of you will have the opportunity to ask the entrepreneur that I'm interviewing a question right then and there. And also, this entrepreneur might have some special gifts and incentives for you, so you will be there live in case they want to drop any links or promo codes or gifts to you. So these are the ways that you can support GYET here on Patreon. I would really appreciate that support. It helps me grow the channel, bring more entrepreneurs that you want to hear from on. So thank you so much for your time and enjoy the episode. This is Get Your Entrepreneurship Together, where you'll find stories, tips, and value from successful entrepreneurs who are out there crushing it. Here's a short preview of this week's episode.
Don't just start copy pasting other people's approaches and solutions to try to solve yours without being sure that the context is the same.
The why is making a decision more important than forecasting? Because we all like to think we know what might happen and we plan for that, but why is that decision more important?
Nothing better than letting a kid bounce the ball, like physically in your store before buying it, because no e-commerce company is going to let you bounce the ball.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I'll be your host here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. And today, we're going to dive into the world of data, and more importantly, how the data that you already have or the data you should be collecting can impact your business to help you get that 1% better every day. And we're not going to focus on trends. We're not going to focus on the latest news cycles of AI. We're going to focus on the foundational core principles of business and how a good data-driven approach can help you impact that growth. And today, Ritavan is here. He's the author of a brand new upcoming book that dives deep into how to do this for you and your business. So let's get into this conversation. Make sure you stick around. Ritavan, thank you so much for coming on, man. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Brian. Right back at you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So just so people get a little bit more background and understanding about, kind of who you are and where you came from, give us the Reader's Digest version, if you will, of how you got into this world of data analytics.
I think the long story short is I kind of have 2 passions, or I have two things around which I orient my life. I think one is thinking from first principles and solving real life problems using the most sophisticated methods or theories out there. And the second thing is P&L impact, owning the P&L and driving impact. Looking back, connecting the dots, I think these are the 2 things that kind of shaped my life. And of course, the rest, in terms of exactly kind of what role or what industry you work in at some point of time, that's just, I don't know, luck or chance or whatever you want to call it. That's the random part. But I think these are the 2 driving principles and the 2 things that really make me tick.
Perfect. And so for those that aren't familiar Can you give just a quick definition and maybe an example of what first order thinking is?
Yeah, of course. I think what happens very often is, if you face with a problem, what you would probably tend to do, if you were not approaching it from a first principles perspective, would be to either pick up the phone and call someone who you think might have known a similar setting and be like, hey, what did you do there? This is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I don't know, if I'm looking for a restaurant or a movie, to watch, or I'm looking for a sports club, why not, right? But if you're trying to solve a problem that's specific to you, right, your business, when you're trying to bring value to your customers, it's not always helpful to ask XYZ out there, because they're not operating in the same context and they're not necessarily focused on the same objective. The other thing you might do is, just search it, right? So you would go on Google and search it, or on or ask today one of the LLMs out there, and look for a textual answer and or description and explanation. And these are all methods where you're essentially trying to operate by looking for an analogy, by looking for someone who has had a similar experience, and you're trying to copy paste their approach, their solution, their experience to your problem. And like I said, very often there is no, like, for many things there is no problem. I mean, it's in fact the right thing to do. Like, you don't need, like, if you're looking for a good, I don't know, let's say you're traveling and you're in a new city, you're in London, and you're looking for a good Italian restaurant. You don't need to necessarily think from first principles. I would just ask, friends living in London, what's the best restaurant, and just go to, the one that the most commonly recommended or whatever. But if I were to solve a problem in my business, if I'm trying to build something that's valuable to my customers, then it does not matter what my friends think, even in similar businesses or industries, because my customers are not necessarily their customers. My customers' problems are not necessarily the problems of their customers, etc. So I think when you have a context that is specific to you, and to which you bring a clear, or you're expected to bring a clear value proposition, I think that's where you need to go back to first principles and think through what the setting is, right? So what are assumptions you can make about what is going on, right? What are things you need to test? What are things you've been able to establish? And then kind of work upwards from there. So, you kind of start with a clean slate. You focus on what you know is true. Easy example is like when you're doing something like this, the laws of physics usually hold, right? So if there's gravity somewhere in the world, there will be gravity somewhere else too, right? So I think those are things that are always true, right? But there are things like customer behavior that are different across different customer groups, across sectors, across business models, across geography. So if you start making assumptions there, right, and just try to copy paste someone else's learnings, that's not going to necessarily work. And so first principles thinking there would be, you need to analyze the data of your customers, you need to speak with them, you need to experiment stuff, etc., to generate new data and learn from what, from the context you're operating in. Does that make sense? Is there something that's not clear, or is there an example that I could give to kind of concretize this further?
No, that does make sense. It kind of it's all in the context, right? It's all in the verbiage. It's first order thinking or first problem thinking. You're not going outside of your business, outside of your expertise in order to have a solution. It's first, it's you. So you're thinking about, like you said, what's true in my business? How are my customers behaving and interacting with what we're already doing? And I think it's brilliant that you said, you need to talk with them, interact with them. One of my guests yesterday, we were just speaking on this as well, the value of polling and understanding what your customers want, why they want it, where they're struggling. And, all of these data points can be put into that what is true bucket, so to speak, right? And
And
then,
what is not true, right? They
and what
go
is
hand
not
in
true.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I want you to dive into that bucket a little bit more deeply as well. So what is not true? Um, how do you start gleaming that information, and why is that so valuable?
If you think about anything you do, um, for a period of time, why like, or when experience is valuable, just very broadly speaking, right? Why and when is experience valuable? It's when you know what not to do, because in theory you have, like, you can do anything, right? And then I think when you learn over time and you get better at something, you know, at the first step, you know what you shouldn't do, right? And then you can focus on the few things that matter. And it's the same thing, I think, in any kind of problem solving setting. Just cutting out all the stuff that's either not true or not relevant. I think that's the first step. Is, of course, do not problem solve with assumptions that are just plain wrong, right? And once you've done that, then focus on the relevant, because there are a lot of things that are true but not relevant to what you're trying to achieve. And so step one is get rid of all the stuff that's not true, right? Highlight the stuff that you know is 100% true, right? Highlight the stuff that you think is probably very true, right? This is all nuanced, right? It's not just black and white. And then mark out the stuff where you say, I think it's true, but I need to confirm, I need to check, I need to experiment, I need to gather data, etc. And so once you kind of take the problem you're trying to solve and break it up into these components, that allows you to solve the problem much better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the, as I was reading, because you generously gave me a pre-release copy of your manuscript to look through. And again, thank you for that. And one of the things that on this subject you went through is, once you have that, what is true, what might be true, and what you need to experiment with, the next step in that, if I remember correctly, is to start poking holes, or trying to poke holes, even maybe in what you think is true, and finding out, is it really this way, or was I being, misled? Did I get that next step right?
Yeah, actually, that's something I have in the intro, and I quote technology forecaster Paul Sappho on a methodology I think he spoke about in 2008. And the idea is the following: if you're trying to solve a problem, if you're trying to forecast something, if you're trying to figure out something that is not known or that's going to happen in the future, what you want to do is start with an assumption, start with the best possible assumption, and build towards that, and then take that as your first iteration and try to break it down then, and challenge and find all the things that might not work, and repeat this process. And you can even parallelize this process, so you can make multiple assumptions and then say, okay, how do I bring them together? What works, what doesn't work? Where are they consistent? Where are they not consistent, etc. And if you repeat this process enough times, and you do it for problems you're trying to solve, you will just get better at it. And the process itself ensures structurally that you're making the best possible decision under uncertainty. And it's super interesting. But I was just kind of thinking about this. If you look at one of the most powerful machine learning algorithms for tabular data, I mean, it's like one of them, but usually, the most commonly used one, is XGBoost, extreme gradient boosting. And to kind of just break it down intuitively, it's essentially follows a similar principle. So it's learning smaller, or it's learning a bunch of models that are not optimized on the entire data set, but on parts of it, and then it combines them, and it repeats the process, and then it tweaks it and improves it. And so essentially, the best machine learning model out there for tabular data is broadly operating on the same principles, right? Which is saying you cannot directly jump to a final model that understands everything. You have to iterate your way there, and you might have to do it by first understanding smaller parts or smaller principles of the problems, and then combining them and keeping what's relevant.
Now that makes perfect sense, and it's a very interesting way. I'm glad you broke it down that way, because some people understand learning language models, some people don't, and how they work. But it's very interesting to hear how the best solutions take that aggregate type of approach versus training on like an entire huge data set. So you're like, basically how we were talking about, you're taking your ideas and working on them and discovering if they're actually true. And something that you say also is that, and I think it pertains to this conversation we're on right now, something that you say is making a decision is more important than forecasting. And why is that? So it's super curious to me. So why is making a decision more important than forecasting? Because we all like to think we know what might happen and we plan for that, but why is that decision more important?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, there's something that has really scarred me across my career, which is that people are so obsessed with trying to forecast things, and then even if they at the end arrive at a good forecast, they don't usually optimize their decision based on that. To take just a very banal example, if you ask me what's going to be the weather, wherever in the town you live tomorrow, and I gave you a very accurate forecast of whether it's going to rain or not, and if you decide and if you just know the forecast and then don't bother taking or not taking an umbrella or whatever the next day, that's not going to make your life better, right? So just knowing what will happen might does not necessarily make your life better. And this is obviously a very binary kind of example, like will it rain, will it not, should I take my umbrella, should I not? So it's a very simple decision setup. It can get more sophisticated, right? So now, I mean, let's just do a thought experiment and suppose someone could tell you exactly what the price movements of each stock in the S&P 500 would be, either perfectly or at least directionally. Then what you could do based on that forecast is take the average and say, okay, on average the S&P 500 will go up, and you could just buy the S&P 500, right? That would be you would make money based on this forecast, but you can do so much better. You could actually go stock by stock and then go long or short based on the direction of price movements, right? And that's kind of the intuition behind what I'm trying to get at, which is stop obsessing so much about knowing what's going to happen in the most exact possible way, even with a rough forecast, right? So suppose I can't tell you the exact price of every stock, but if I can give you the direction, you can already trade on it. Like you can already act on it and make money on it, right? And so I think the focus should always be, of course you want to get as good a forecast as possible, but you also want to get a forecast that's the most actionable possible, right? And then you want to act the smartest possible way given that forecast. That's where the value is created, because just knowing what will happen and then sitting on your couch is not going to, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, right. I like how you say it's not those really granular things that you need to focus on. It's the overall direction or the overall trend, and then making that smart decision about how to best move forward with it. Because you're
Yeah,
right, you have to.
if you have the granularity, like, or let's say you will not always have it at the most granular level you want, but with whatever level of granularity you have, you can act, right? And so of course, if I just told you the S&P 500 would go up or down in aggregate, that's something you can trade on. And then the best decision there is to say, okay, if it's going up I buy, if it's going down I short, right? But if I could now tell you for individual stocks in the S&P 500, then the best decision is no longer just to buy or sell the S&P 500, it's to trade at individual stock level, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at, is like the kind of forecast you have, the type of forecast, like the granularity, the detail, right? Is it a price level, or is it just the direction, etc.? Like all these things matter, because you need to then optimize the decision based on the kind of forecast or the kind of estimation or learning model or whatever you have about the world. Because I can give you the best possible forecast, but if you were for whatever reason paralyzed on your couch, there's just no point in forecasting, what I mean? So that's why I mean, like that's how I kind of always insist that the forecast, it's good to focus on the forecast, but it's way more important to focus on the forecast plus optimizing the decision. The two have to go together. And I have an example of a trader being able to take an asymmetric bet on a forecast, because a forecast need not just be something that's binary, right? It did not be just one thing, it could be a whole portfolio of things, right? And so that's where optimizing the decision becomes super important. And you have the same thing for a retail store, right? Like in terms of what products should you stock or not. And so there's just so many examples in kind of day-to-day business that can benefit from this way of thinking.
Perfect. Yeah, and you actually started going where I wanted to go next, and I love it when this happens. So, first, I want to ask this question to make sure that we're not going to be, wasting our viewers' time. But would it be a good use of our time to talk about a more, I guess, concrete example of, let's say, a retail store and how they can start using their current data and their current resources in order to make a more optimized and maybe even a digital experience for their customers. Would that be something that we could get into?
Um, we could try it. I guess we could try it, but yeah, let's see where that goes. I guess you can edit it out if you want to.
Yeah, that's the beauty of podcasting, man. You can always edit it out if it turns out to be
Exactly.
crap. But
Yeah.
I think we'll have a good result. So I was thinking about a let's say just a mom and pop sports supply store. Soccer balls, baseballs, sports
Mhm.
equipment, right? If they have not really started collecting, or well, they obviously have collected some data, right? But they're not really utilizing it, right? They have it, but they're not doing anything with it. So what kinds of data can a physical one location store, what kind of data can they gather, or should they start gathering in order to really start growing that data set? And then we'll get into how they can start utilizing it.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's do the following, right? Since we're doing a thought experiment, and this is something I also recommend in the book is like use the power of thought experiments. Something that Brad Jacobs has popularized through his book How to Make a Few $1 billion, which I highly recommend everyone reads. But let's come back to our retail store and let's start from my framework. So I have a 6-step approach that just helps you focus on the 6 dimensions, or like the six steps that matter. So the first step is save, right? So like don't go and see what your what the retail store in the next town has done, because it does not really matter to you. It does not matter what a retail store in Australia has done or whatever, right? Like don't just start copy pasting other people's approaches and solutions to try to solve yours without being sure that the context is the same. Okay, so avoid wasting money, and especially if someone comes and tries to sell you stuff and says, oh look, you can install this software, or you can buy this subscription, or you can upgrade your so and so system. Don't just act on that thinking that will solve your problem, because there are no quick fixes. So step one is save that money. Don't follow group think. Save the money you would have wasted on these kind of things. Keep that aside. We'll use that as seed capital for the rest. Okay. Step two, leverage, right? So what is leverage? Leverage is about completely understanding your unfair advantage from first principles. So let's go back to our example. So a mom and pop store selling, I don't know, soccer balls, baseball bats, basketballs, etc. So what's your unfair advantage? Like if you're still in business, that means you have customers, right? So if someone were to start a new store, they don't have customers. So for example, if they were a startup store, right, then the first thing would be to help them figure out how to get customers. You already have customers, so now the question is, how do you like how well do you understand your customers? And what is super important here is understanding the distribution of data, like the distribution of data in your customer and behavior and customer behavior data. So let's say you have 100 customers, right? Is each customer buying the same products, right? Are they all buying one soccer ball, one baseball bat, one baseball bat, and one basketball, or not, right? So that, like, these are all questions that another store cannot help you with. This is your customers, it's your data. You need to understand that, right? And why is that important? Because it could be that the ideal customer of your store is a family with, I don't know, 2 kids, like on average. And so and all those kids play 3 sports, right? And so they all come in to buy one soccer ball, one basketball, and one baseball bat. But it could be that you live in a part of the country that's just super hardcore about soccer, right? Like if you were in Europe, for example, they don't, like, we don't play baseball here, and so no one's going to buy a baseball bat. Which means if you were a store in Europe and you spoke to a friend who has a store in, I don't know, in Texas, there's just like, it's just completely irrelevant what they do, because the kind of things people buy there are not the same, right? If you could be in an area which is like a high talent density place where the NBA recruits, right, then people probably going to buy more basketball. And so understanding the distribution of your customers, of what they buy, etc., is super important. That already gives you an edge over anyone else trying to do this, because you understand your customers, you understand their needs, and you understand the things that drive your revenue and profitability, right? So it could be, right, that every family in the town, in the small town or village, is buying from you, right, if there are a lot of young families. It could be that it's retirees buying from you. Perhaps they're getting into sports after they're retired. They have more time, right? We don't know. So that's what I'm trying to get at. That's the first principles approach: is understand what's going on, and now look for patterns. And there are broadly two categories I would say you should, we can speak about without having specific data. We can still speak about two broad categories. One is Gaussians or bell curves or whatever, right? Heights of people or weights of people, etc. Like things that where where most people are around the mean, around the average. And then there are a few outliers. So if we went to this town or this village and wrote down the heights of everyone or the weights of everyone, right, we would see that there would be some kind of average weight, and that the population would mainly be around the average, and a few people would be super obese or super thin, and or they would be super tall and super short or whatever, right? That kind of data is useful because it kind of helps you figure out the range of things you need. So let's say if for example we're in this scenario where everyone's buying like three different items, that allows you then to say, okay, my ideal customer is a family that's buying a whole set of different sports items, right? And then that's an unfair advantage you can use now to focus on range, right? So like your value proposition can be, hey, my customers care about range and about perhaps being able to test it in store, because nothing better than letting a kid bounce the ball like physically in your store before buying it, because no e-commerce company is going to let you bounce the ball.
Right.
I,
Good
I
point.
think that I think if you can get a kid to touch something before they buy it, I think your conversion rate is probably 100%. Like I remember from my childhood, the more or just observe kids in a store, right? Like there's nothing more exciting than to be able to touch and feel. And if that's your ideal customer and that's your value proposition to your customer, right? Then I would even organize like free walk-in days, right? Or perhaps get a local sports star to come and like coach something, whatever, right? That's an advantage you have as a physical mom and pop store, right? Versus a pure play digital e-commerce player. They can't do that. What they can do much better than you is scale. What they can do much better than you is sourcing products, negotiating with suppliers, buying in big volumes, right? So that's their strength, right? Stop playing the game based on their strengths. Play the game, play on your court and play the game you are designed to win, right? You can't compete with them on margins, you can't compete with them on price, right? But if Johnny and Johnny's son can come, and Johnny's son, Mark, can come and bounce the ball in your store, Johnny's going to take out his wallet and buy Mark a ball right there in your store, right? It doesn't matter if your basketball costs like $1 more, or even 10 for that matter. I don't know, right? I mean, these are things you can work out, right? Once you have granular data, once you understand customer behavior, once you understand their needs and wants and their pain points, right? Perhaps these are young families too, in both parents are earning, right? They have disposable income. They wouldn't mind paying the extra $5 or $10 if their kid can choose from a range of balls, right? While an e-commerce player is probably focused on price and on perhaps on speed of delivery, but that's again something you can beat them on, where you can say, look, if we don't have it currently in our portfolio, we can order it for you. But the advantage is the haptic experience. You can touch, you can feel it, you can test it, perhaps you can bring it back, right? Or I play squash. If you're selling squash rackets, you can offer them restring, like stringing, so like where you tighten the strings again after a year, right? Or you exchange the band on the handle. Like these are all little things that perhaps might cost you a bit more, but that drive customer retention, that drive growth, that drive word of mouth, that drive loyalty like nothing else.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I wanted to really just nail this point home about what you call the haptic experience, or the physical touch and interaction with an object. And guys, if it's right, that's right. If you're thinking about how do I possibly compete with Amazon at my little store, well, this is a major point of how you do it. And to really drive this point home, think about the example of you and your kid going into the toy section at Walmart, Target, whatever, and there's toys there that have a little window in the packaging that says touch me. How powerful is that? And how many times will your kid touch that button? They're going to do it. Heck, me as an adult, I'm going to do it because I want to see what happens. So if companies that are out there making millions upon millions of dollars spending money on packaging, marketing, and product development, if they're putting a haptic feature into their packaging, how powerful do you think it would actually be for you to do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point, Brian, and that brings me to the, to, and that's something I don't, of course, don't have in the book, but specifically for this example, right, what you brought up around gamification, you can actually design events or other tactics in your store where you're trying to test certain things. So you could, I don't know, put up a basket near the exit and be like, oh, anyone who walks out, you need to put it through the hoop. I mean, you can try a whole bunch of things and learn from them based on your audience. All of this would be irrelevant if we took a similar mom and pop store in another town that was aging, right, where the average buyer is retirees who want to play golf. That's a whole, that's a very different type of uh, problem that, or opportunity, right? And then if now the guy in that store calls up the chap in the store with kids, it doesn't, like, any advice he gives is completely irrelevant, right? Because the unfair advantage of one mom and pop store in one store is different from the mom and pop store in the other village. And so that guy now needs to think about, okay, if people are buying golf accessories from me, what else can I offer them, right? Are they interested in traveling to the best golf resorts around the world, right? Whatever, right? I mean, these are all things you need to work from first principles by understanding your customer, by analyzing your customer data, by finding the relevant patterns there, and then speaking to your customers based on that, by engaging with them, by testing new offers, right, by testing new packages, new pricing. These are all things that you can do because you, one, already have a store, a legacy business, right? You have existing customers, right? And you can offer them a value proposition that goes well beyond the product and the price. A
Mm,
pure play everyone's like, oh, Amazon's going to eat you for breakfast. Yeah, they're going to eat you for breakfast if you play on Amazon's turf.
right.
If you play on your turf, like, you've eaten them the day before, right? Like, they're not even like your customers don't care about Amazon because they're not looking, like, if you play the price game, if you have a price game without any differentiation, if you do not counter position to Amazon, of course they're going to eat you, right? But the moment you counter position and say, you call everyone for a, I don't know, an event, a party to your store, and you tell your whole town, look, you can buy online, it's cheaper, but you can't test, you can't play with, you cannot bounce the ball, right? You cannot speak to the local nutritionist, which I will offer, as a service, I don't know, once a month. You pay the nutritionist for an hour, but anyone who buys on that day can get nutritional advice, like sports nutrition advice, right? And I know you did a massage therapy degree. You could offer advice around, around injuries, right? Recovering from sports. You could teach the basics of, massage therapy 101, and do a workshop for them, right, where you cover the cost of this. These are all things Amazon can do, and people, like, if it's bringing value to people, they will pay for it, right? People don't have a problem paying for something. It's just that if you are a bland physical version of Amazon, like a copy paste version of Amazon, of course they're going to go for the cheaper version.
Right. Right. And in thinking about different ways of expansion, this whole conversation is getting my mind going. So going back to the sports supply store, right? So let's say that you are curious about maybe if you can get into exercise equipment or equipment to
Mhm.
help you, get in shape, get flexible, lose weight, whatever it is, right? One of the ways you could do that is go into Facebook and see if there are any strength training groups or weight loss groups for your town, right? And how many people are in those groups? Is it, maybe 5 or 10, or is it 5 or 10,000, depending on where you live? And if it's 5 or 10,000, well, now you've got a viable market that you can start reaching out to and research to say, hey, if we were to add a physical exercise section to what we do, and teach classes on the weekends to help you get into it, would that be something you'd want to come out to? What do you think about something like that?
100%, right? That's one like so. I mean, broadly, they're kind of two extremes, right? You can go like, okay, I have 10,000 people, right, and I can offer each of them 2 or 3 products, right? That kind of ends up in a nice number. And the other way is if we go to to this town where they're retirees, rich retirees, no kids, like mainly people who come for retirement because I don't know, it's like in a nice location or whatever, and they might then be, there you might find a group of golf enthusiasts. Perhaps they're only 500 people, right? But if you say, let's say half of them, and they all, their share of wallet, the kind of lifestyle, the kind of experiences they're looking for is very different, right? And so you could go in there and say, okay, out of 500, if even let's say 200 where to buy a luxury golf vacation package from me, where you're playing on a golf court, I don't know, in Cape Town, in Abu Dhabi, in Singapore, in Australia, in Europe somewhere, and kind of do the tour of the world, and you get to play at really nice resorts with a full service package, and you make a margin of, let's say, $1,000. With 200 people, we're already at 200K on top, right? For not really buying any equipment. You just have to find the right tour partners. You need to package it correctly, you need to offer it, and you can be the local guy. You can say, look, if there is any problem, you can come and talk to me, right? You're not calling some support line where God knows who picks up where, right? Or it's a chatbot. So you can personalize the whole thing. You can build these relationships, and if these guys are willing to travel around the world and play golf, God knows
And
what
they
more you
are.
can offer them.
And they are. Golf people will travel to specific courses. Like they have bucket lists.
Exactly.
I've played on this course and this course and this course. So they will 100% do that. So I love this point. It's a really easy way to bring interest into your location, into your store, especially if you sell golf equipment with your sports, right? And you can say, like you said, I'm the local guy. Before you step out onto this course to have your fun, to check that off of your list, stop in, talk to us. We'll let you know, like, what's the skinny on the green? How does it roll? What are the best clubs that you need to have in order to get around this bunker, which is notorious for putting people in the water? All of those little things.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
You can
gold.
personalize, right? In the physical world, as a physical legacy business, you can personalize to your customers at a level that no pure play digital player can. And I think this is my biggest message. And in the book, especially, I worked a decade in legacy businesses across different legacy industries, energy, banking, real estate, manufacturing, wholesale, insurance in some form or the other. And I think the most important thing is when if you see a pure play e-commerce player grow globally, you freak out and you say, oh, how do I become a pure play e-commerce player? Well, if you're competing on their metrics, right, on their turf, of course you feel you're going to be wiped out. But the moment you focus on your core value proposition to your existing customers and their friends, you like, it does not matter what the other guys are doing, because your value proposition is super clear and is counter positioned to theirs. Because no pure play e-commerce player can go to these guys in your town and say, oh, I'm the local guy. It's not going to happen. They just can't be the local guy. You can be the local guy and no one else can be the local guy. All right. And so you've counter positioned. And I use a US example. I mean, I've never lived or traveled to the US, but I think a very poignant example of this is how Walmart in the last couple of years has repositioned itself. Because the news was full of, for Amazon is going to wipe out everyone in retail and blah blah blah, and like, this is the game is already over. And over the last 5 years, Walmart has built up 3 new ventures, right? So they had Walmart Plus, I think, was a subscription business. They had Walmart Connect, where they use, like, Walmart understands their customers way better than any pure play e-commerce player. Because yes, you can order online, or like Walmart has an online business, but Walmart has stores. And so the way Walmart understands you as a customer, because like in a haptic sense, once you enter the store, right? What are the products you buy in which store, right? At what time of the day, why, like which products do you buy together? It's like the kind of understanding they have of you as a customer in the physical world is something unmatched, which no pure play digital player can replicate. And that's why you see Amazon repeatedly trying to buy, Whole Foods, trying to somehow get a physical footprint, right? And the
Mm.
reason for that is, if you already have a physical footprint, stop freaking out, stop looking at the flashy headlines about how you're going to get wiped out, etc. Yes, you're going to get wiped out if you act stupid, but if you act smart, if you counter position, if you focus on your unfair advantage, right, on your legacy customers, on your, what I like how people speak about the the physical disadvantage, and I say it's the unfair, um, you have an unfair physical advantage, right? So your disadvantage is now your advantage, and play that game. No one can, I mean, you don't even have you don't even have competition anymore. Suddenly you're playing a different game. So stop playing other people's game, play the game. You're like, play on the turf where you were born to win, and there is no one that can stop you if you execute that correctly, right? So pick the right game, pick your battlefield, so that you can win, right? So that's the second step in the framework, right? So we started with save, don't do the stupid things, then decide and pick the smart things, right? Pick your battlefield correctly, right? Pick the game you want to play, and the one you are designed to win, right? The next step is align. Now take everything you have, right? Your capital, your employees, your partners, your suppliers, etc. Make it crystal clear to everyone, this is the game, and we're all in this together, and we want to win, right? Align everyone to that. Define the right metrics, right? Set the right north star, be very clear at what you want to achieve. Align everyone to this, and start executing. And when it comes to starting to execute, the next step, so we did save, leverage, align. The next step,
Just one
sure.
thing, Ritavan, because you just said something really powerful that I don't think I've ever heard before, and I it's really easy to miss. So I want to make sure we get this. What you've just said about alignment. When most people think about alignment, even an entrepreneur that's inside and running their business, they're thinking about alignment between what their vision is, how their employees view and work within that vision, and maybe about their customers. What they don't focus on, or what I've never heard before, is extending that alignment to your suppliers, your vendors, your logistics people, extending that mission to those types of people. How powerful would it be to a company to have a vendor get on board, or a manufacturer get on board with the vision of your company? What kind of deals that could you structure that they will give to no one else if you were able to enroll them into your vision? It's
Yeah.
incredibly powerful. So I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. And why won't they, right? Because I mean, if it's a true partnership, right, then they would, like, your success is their success. And then there's another, like, aspect I think that a lot of legacy physical businesses don't understand is, you own the haptic experience, right, of your customers, and so you know things about them that your vendor will never know, right? Because your vendor can also sell is probably also selling to a pure play digital player, right? They're probably selling to online players, but
Oh yeah.
the kind of feedback you can give to your vendors, like, how does Johnny's baby boy bounce his basketball, right? Or which baseball bat does he pick and try, right? And these are all anecdotes, but also data, right? Like, the way what are you able to upsell to whom and why, right? I mean, these are all insights that your vendor would pay a fortune for. And I think this, again, like, coming back to what Walmart does, or they with, I think it was Walmart Data Ventures, like, that was the third, as I said, Walmart Plus, Walmart Connect, Walmart Data Ventures, their most recent um, purely data driven initiative is about taking these learning or in-store experiences, like digital married with in-store experiences, like understanding the customer journey from the digital world into the physical world, right? Putting that all together and providing those insights to suppliers. Suppliers will pay you money for that if you do
Mm.
it correctly, right? Because if you're now a supplier and I'm the mom and pop store, you probably have other mom and pop stores, and some of them might be the golf retiree kind of mom and pop store, but perhaps there are other mom and pop stores with similar demographics as my town, right, with young families, with so you can scale your distribution much better, because now suddenly you can contextualize what works where, right? So like you can broadly look at the US, take all your towns and be like, okay, these are my mom and pop stores to whom I kind of sell products. I can broadly now cluster them into young families, retirees, whatever else, right? So I can now have a much better understanding of who I'm selling to, because the biggest problem your suppliers, distributors, manufacturers, etc. have is they're cut out from the customer.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. And you having that on the ground data and being able to supply that to them, you're right. It's powerful because they can better predict, production flow and how much product do they need to produce and when. Is it seasonal? Is it all year round? Well, that's going to depend on your location, and if it's a fairly specific sport that's only really played during school time, things like this. All of
Where
that
do you
data.
invest R&D, right? Because that's, again, like it goes much more than just like day-to-day decisions. Like where should you invest R&D? Because there are new sports, I think, that pick up that, like I know, for example, in Munich, the city where I live in southern Germany, post-war squash picked up. Like there were tons of clubs, like dozens of clubs that opened, and now there are like half a dozen left, right? So you had this wave of like sport becoming popular and then dropping off, right? You have similar patterns with things like paddle, right? With I don't even know all these. Like there's a whole bunch. There's this other sport, where you bounce a ball on like a small trampoline kind of thing, etc. Like there's a whole bunch of sports that people are inventing, trying out, that pick up, that that get very popular, that grow in certain regions. Like if you were able to understand that, you could now suddenly invest R&D in building, in adding new products to your portfolio. You could target marketing in certain ways, so you could say, hey, look, on the East Coast, these sports are working better than somewhere else, right? These are all things you can do that you could not do before. And as a mom and pop store, if you start thinking that way and partnering with your suppliers that way, yes, of course, you're just one mom and pop store among many. But if you own the customer relationship, you can go beyond the data and add narratives, add stories, that you could allow your suppliers to test products in your store, because Johnny is bouncing the ball in your store. Johnny is not bouncing it on Amazon.com, right? So now you could tell basketball companies, if you're investing in R&D and trying to change the basketball, and you're trying to make one that's, I don't know, children friendly or whatever. I mean, like I can't tell you what they're going to do, but like if they want to test something, they can send they can send the product to you, and now suddenly you have deepened the relationship. You're bringing them value. They might be willing to pay for that.
100%. And just real quick, because I want to touch on something else before we have to go today. This relationship again with suppliers and coming up with new innovative products or versions. If you, as that mom and pop owner of that sports equipment store, you have an idea for a better product or a different product, or maybe even a game that you feel would be, that would take off, you could essentially work with that manufacturer and create a deal where when they launch that product nationwide, globally, whatever, because it's your idea, you helped in the development process, you now get a cut of every single one of those sales. And now all of a sudden, your little mom and pop store is a national player. And it was all based on that idea and the relationship.
You built an IP asset, right? I think that's the point, right? You
Exactly.
built an IP asset, and again, it's not like you're sitting there and crunching, like, I don't know, tons of data, but like data is just like a it's like something stored on a computer based on some customer experience. But like if you enrich that with the with the haptic experience, with the interactions, with etc., and through that you can create IP, right? And then you license that IP, or you partner with a supplier on that IP. You've now taken your mom and pop classic business model that's about to be crushed by some pure play online player, right? And you've just created a new layer of value, right? And I think that's the core message I'm trying to get out with my book: is stop playing other people's game. You are a legacy business. Play on your turf. Play to your strengths. Align everyone to that. simplify everything else. Don't get distracted, because there are a million different things. Someone will ask you to upgrade your CRM and perhaps do this, and get a new ERP, and like there's a lot of people who are going to try to sell you stuff and get you distracted from this core value proposition. So stick to your core value proposition. Forget everything else, or remove the clutter, optimize what you can do. And what I mean by that is, let's say we figure out we have these kids and they're having this haptic experience in the store, and we want to, that's the real value we bring into the town, right? Then focus on that. Then do every day, I don't know, 3 to 4, like after school time, 1 hour, kids can come. You get a local coach to coach them, right? Every once a month you try to get a sports star to come and give them a pep talk, or whatever. Like, you can go crazy there, right? You can experiment stuff, you can try stuff, and so you can really optimize the value creation mechanism you have unlocked, and then you can grow. There's nothing holding you back. Now you can franchise this, and you can, and then again, like, now this works for a certain type of town with young families. So now look for other towns with young families. Don't go to the next town where
Right.
retirees live, right? That's why
Right.
you've gotten smarter, because now you're thinking from first principles. You're not just trying to copy paste. And now like, so we said you're the classic mom and pop store. You stop doing stupid things. You focus on that, on your unfair advantage, so that you are playing on your turf, where a pure play player cannot compete with you because you've counter positioned. You align all your efforts, your capital, your employees, your resources, your suppliers to that, right? You then simplify, meaning you stop doing, you stop trying to do 100 different things. You really focus on this core value proposition. You optimize it, right? With data, with experiments, with trying out things, with testing things, with collecting feedback, etc. And then you can grow, and you build this IP asset, right? So you have your core business, you built an IP layer on top, which you can then like partner with suppliers, or which you can license. And based on that, based on these learnings, you can now take this entire legacy business with IP thing, copy paste it, and try to grow a franchise. I mean, there's just no limit to what you can do. The only limit is like the way, like the clarity and the courage that you have in you to really want to drive impact for your customers. There's nothing holding you back, and you're not on the back foot, right? The world is full of opportunities, and if you apply these ideas correctly, adapt it to your business, think from first principles, there's really nothing that can stop you.
That is such a great message, and it's a message that I think people need to hear right now. It's a message of abundance mindset. It's a message of hope. But I love how you also said it's a function of courage as well. Because yeah, you've got to be brave to step out into the unknown in order to do this, but it doesn't have to be as scary as like wearing a blindfold and walking a plank, with having the proper data and doing the research. Ritavan, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. Where can people find out about you, find out the book, get onto a pre-order list? Where do we go?
Yeah, I think the best place to go to is www.ritavan.com. So myname.com, ritavan.com. For now, there's a wait list. In the future, I I I want to build out a lot more resources for readers, because like I'm not written like a fiction book that's going to entertain you. I've written a book that is supposed to help you implement these ideas. But of course, it's not a cookbook. Like the whole point of first principles thinking is that you look at your context and solve that problem based on, like, you play on the turf, you pick the battlefield that best for you to win. And I cannot, in my book, for every reader individually write down what that playbook looks like, right? What I can give is a general set of principles, examples, and anecdotes and references, which I have done in the book. But then I want to equip you with more, because I didn't write this book for writing a book, right? I've written this book so that you can, so that the mom and pop store now has resources, has a playbook, has content that's adapted to them, right? I'm not giving you a SaaS playbook. There's amazing content out there for SaaS businesses, right? For SaaS startups, B2B SaaS startups, etc. For tech product development, there's insane content out there. What I'm trying to do is try to give you a playbook And it's crazy that you picked a mom and pop sports store as an example. If I picture it, probably somewhere in the Midwest, right? I have never been there, but I think, again, if we think from first principles, I think we can provide a structure that's useful, right? And then it's all about adapting it, to the problem you're trying to solve. And I hope and wish and really want to tell your listeners, this is something you can do. It's, you can take your destiny back in your hands and do something about it. And I wish you all the best, and I want to provide you with all the resources I can to help you achieve that.
Ritavan, thank you so much for everything you shared here today. Like I said before, a message of hope, a message of resiliency, and how to actually do this in the real world. I love the example that we went through. So, just again, thank you so much for everything you've shared here today.
Thanks a lot, Brian. It was a fun conversation. I think you took me into a thought experiment. I have personally never worked in, like, it's not like I grew up with a mom and pop store selling sports equipment. But yeah, I hope it was useful. I hope it wasn't. I think it was kind of realistic what we discussed, and I really hope that this kind of shows how you can start from the principles in the book and really, for your own challenges, kind of think from scratch, from first principles, identify the opportunities, right? Align everything to that, optimize and grow. And yeah, and I wish you luck. I wish every listener luck, and I hope they can really make use of this.
They absolutely can. And yeah, again, just really thank you for everything that you've done, everything you've created with the book. Again, guys, that link is going to be below. Go to the website, get on the pre-order list, because as you can see from this conversation, this applies to everyone, this framework and how to do this. So share the show. Share the show with your network. You never know whose life you can positively impact with just a simple and free share. So give it a like, subscribe if you aren't already, and peace. We'll see you in the next one.